And so just to give a little bit of an extra hint, you can really start off with this broad of a net. I mean, really at this point, the only thing you know is that I'm really not Batman was the target of this attack. And you can start there. You can start with I'mReallyNotBatman.com as your base search, and then start looking at, well, where do I have data regarding I'm Really Not Batman? You've got some Suricata, you've got some packet capture, some interesting data sources that may contain your answer. And Andy, I see that your hand is up. Does that mean you found the IP address already? Hey, awesome. Way to go, June. Just putting the hints back up on here. So those of you less familiar with Splunk, when you get that first search done, most of the fields that will be that will pertain to what you're looking for are going to be there on the left side under those interesting fields. So just simply looking through what's available to you in the interesting fields and taking a look at some of the results in those interesting fields, which you can do by clicking on them, will lead you very quickly to the answer. Oh, June, you have a question. Yeah, go right ahead. And you know, you guys feel free if you want to either if you want to just talk to me, you can do it in the just to the panelists, which I think you did, June, or you can do it to all attendees, and you can make comments to all attendees as well. But go for it, June. What's up? Oh, okay, cool. I'm so good. I didn't even have to answer your question. You just mentally transmitted it to you. Anybody else think they have the answer? All right, well, I'm going to give one more minute just in case some of you bloodhounds are hot on the trail. And then I'm going to walk you through the first answer. And as I walk you through the first one, it's going to give you a pretty good feel for the methodology here. And the following questions are going to become much easier for you to find. So just another more minute. Actually, if anyone needs another minute, please put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and walk through our first solution. How's that? All right, doesn't look like anybody needs any extra time. Let's take a look at how we would find this answer. So I told you to cast your net wide. So we can start with the one bit of information we know for sure, which is I'mReallyNotBatman.com. And when we take a look, we do see that there's quite a bit of data, in this case logs, regarding I'mReallyNotBatman.com in our IDS, in our packet capture, and some other data sources here as well. That's great. That we'll probably find what we're looking for in there. If we scroll down, I told you that the SRC field, source field, is going to contain your answer. And if we scroll down in these interesting fields, we're going to find the field called SRC. Oh, can you guys not see my screen? I am showing it. Can everybody, can you see my screen? The rest of the class, anybody? You can see it? Bob can see it? Okay. You see finding source addresses, right? Yeah, okay. Yep. So Tammy, I'm not sure. So the screen is in through the Zoom. So if you're And maybe when you started in your browser, it sunk to the back or something. Have you found it, Tammy? Okay, cool. All right, so if we take a look at the source field and we just simply click on it, we're going to get this box here that pops up that shows us the top values essentially of this field. And we see a couple of addresses here, both internal and external. I really hope 192.168 was not vuln scanning our web server, unless it's actually one of our own vuln scanners. And then some external IP addresses. And this top address, 40, that's probably our prime suspect here, right? Vuln scanning is a noisy business, right? It's going to create a lot of traffic to our web server, so there's a good chance that 40 is our suspect. 23 here as well, potentially, but 40 is where I'd be putting my bet. That's not proof though, right? We need to actually validate our hypothesis, but at least we're building a hypothesis. Now, when you've got a vuln scan going on, that's going to come over the wire, and we are fortunate enough to have packet capture here. So we might want to check literally in the wire feed, the packet capture. So stream HTTP. And by the way, you didn't have to type this back here. When we were looking at the source types, we can literally just click on that and add it up into our search. But here it is in our search. And if we take a look at source again, we see that that narrows things down considerably. Only 40 and 23 we're talking to I'mReallyNotBatman.com over HTTP in this particular data set. So 40 is still my suspect, but I want to fully validate my hypothesis. So I'm going to switch source types now to Suricata, to our intrusion detection, because intrusion detection stuff would know about stuff like that, right? A vuln scan usually sends packets very similar to the exploit, if not exactly like the exploit. It just doesn't complete the attack in most cases. So I know that 40 is my suspect here, so I'll add that up into the search. And again, I could do that simply by clicking 40 when I was looking at source IPs. I can switch my source type to Suricata. And when I do that, I'm going to want to scroll all the way down, because what we want from Suricata is the signatures. And signatures isn't showing up here in the most common fields. So we're going to take a look at the remaining fields that we couldn't display on the left. So if you click on 19 more fields, and then within the search box in the dialog that comes up, type in SIG. And by the time you get done with G, you're going to have something that looks like this. And there's our signatures. If we expand the signature field out, what do we see? Yeah, 103 possible cross-site scripting attempts, 48 likely cross-site scripting attempts, some SQL injection. Yeah, does this look like a vuln scan? If you've ever worked in a SOC, yeah, this pretty much does look like a vuln scan. At this point, I can say we've validated our hypothesis. If we were actually competing, we'd go to our scoring server, we'd pop 40 into the answer, in the scoring server as our answer, and then we would also paste our search if we wanted bonus points. So good job, Team CornCon. You guys just scored 100 points. In the example search here, we're getting a little fancy, and we're doing it for a couple reasons. One, to teach you about other commands that you may use later on in this class, but also to show you a way that you can take your results and put it into tables that might be helpful if you're building a report. So in this particular case, we've taken what we were looking for, and then we threw it into a special kind of table. It's called stats. Stats lets you do multiple things like count. And when you want to count things, you tell it what you want to count by. So in this particular case, we're counting up the source IPs, and then we're sorting it in reverse order so that the top value comes to the top of the table. So we're also, because we are awesome junior investigators, we're going to map this to our kill chain as well. So attackers obviously doing some recon here, and the IP address for that recon was 40. Another great documentation format is basically an attack diagram. So if we start building out essentially a Visio of what was going on here, we've got 40 doing a vuln scan against I'mReallyNotBatman.com. As this fleshes out, you'll see that this is a fairly useful tool for documenting attacks. It's really great if you're doing a follow the sun, or you have tiered SOC where tier 1 might escalate to tier 2 and tier 3. A picture like this, and as it fleshes out, you'll see, is really helpful for visualizing the attack. On to our next challenge. It's going to build off of what you already learned. So we know how to find data that contains this vuln scan. We want to know what vuln scanner Poison Ivy used. And we might want to know that for multiple things. This can help us build our own internal threat feed and fingerprint of our attackers, so that we can do at least a little bit of attribution, or at least try to identify our attackers' TTPs. For those of you less familiar with vuln scanners, all vuln scanners pretty much out there announce what they are. Now, an attacker can change that, right? But by default, they're going to tell you what they are, because if they're being used by our own people, you know, we want it to be easily identified. That announcement is going to show up in various places. It's going to show up in packet headers. It's going to show up in places like user agent strings. So you'll actually be able to find the vuln scanner's name, because it's going to say, this is blah, blah, blah vuln scanner, in those data sets. And that will be the answer to your question. If you see a word that you think might be a vuln scanner, but you're not familiar, who's everybody's, what's every investigator's best friend? Google. So I'll give you like 2 minutes, and then we'll walk through the answer. By the way, while you're going through that, for those of you that are doing the following through on the app, I'm going to switch over to the app and show you how we would have gotten to that answer, the previous answer in the app itself. So if we had gone to the APT scenario and then went to finding the IP address that was scanning a web server, the very first search here is going to do exactly what we showed you in the slides, which is look for anything involving I'mReallyNotBatman.com. And then if we, just like in the slides, if we scroll down until we find the source field, whoop, there it is. There's our results. There's our suspect, but we have to further validate, right? So if we wanted to further validate, we could do things like literally adding 40 up into our search. So we're finding things, and then maybe change the source type to suricata, like I had showed you. And within suricata results, we can actually take a look at the signature fields, and there's that the evidence of that vuln scan right there. So that's a way you can use the app to give yourself a hint, and then further refine. Or if you're still not sure after running that first search, you can run the next search, which is taking a look at the stream data, which would then allow us to look at the source field and see who's in there, right? 40 is the only one there now. The search isn't done running, but it's in there. And in this case, we not only had to find it, but we had to validate it. So this was one of those two-parters. And here are more searches and more searches, slowly bringing us closer and closer to the answer of our question. And if you're following along, the next challenge is identifying the name of the web vuln scanner. So you could literally click here next and continue following along in the app. Those of you doing it from the search bar, you know what you're doing, and you would just start entering your search in here. Oh, Daniel, yes, you can get access to the system here. Are you still here, Daniel? I didn't see you until you put that in the Q&A. Cool. All right. So I'm going to get you a set of credentials here. Hold on just a minute. So Daniel, in the chat, actually, I can probably do it for you in the Q&A. Go to that Google Doc that I just pasted in the Q&A. That'll bring you to this document here. When you get to this document, you can claim a set of credentials for your own just by putting your name in there. Then go to the link of whichever one you claim, use that set of credentials, and you will be in your lab environment. Let me know if you have any trouble getting to it. You bet. And Daniel, once you're in, let me know, and I'll show you how to navigate to that app that I was just telling everybody is a companion to this class. Bob, I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, yes, good job. So Daniel, let me know when you're all logged in. You can't. Okay. I'm going to put it in the chat. So switch over to the chat, Daniel, and I'll put it in there and see if you can copy it from there. Try that. In fact, you should be able to just click on it there. By the way, happy almost Halloween, everybody. You can see that my wife, oh, well, you could see when I had my camera on that my wife had already started with the decorations. Cool, Daniel, you're in. So what you want to do is you're going to be somewhere that looks like this. If you're used to Splunk, you can do your searches from here. If you need help with your searches, you want to get like little hints, we have this app here. So if you click on this and then right click on opening and open in a new tab, you're going to get, let's start at the base. You're going to get an app that looks like this. And then to navigate to where we are in the class at any time, take a look at what I have up here on the slides. So it tells you we're in the recon phase, and the question is identifying the vuln scanner. From here, you can go recon, which matches up with my slide, identifying the web vuln scanner. And this app will provide you with searches that get you closer and closer to the answer without giving away right away. So the reason why we're looking at 40 in our search is because we found out that it was doing the vuln scanning in the last question. So our current question is, see if we can figure out who, which vuln scanner was actually in use. That should catch you up. Most of the classes probably had enough time to find the answer. So I'm going to walk you through the answer for this one. So just watch as we go through the answer, and that should help you figure out how to carry on through the rest of the class. Are there any other questions? No. Good. Good. All right, let's go through the answer. So I gave you a couple hints. User agent strings and packets themselves may contain the information that you're looking for this challenge. So let's take a look at that. We know that 40 was our attacker, the one that was doing the vuln scan, so we can narrow down our search really fast that way, right? We also know that headers is one of the places we might want to look, and headers are going to be where they're going to be in packet captures. So if we add stream HTTP, which is our stream is our packet capture, and the particular protocol is going to be HTTP. So we'll go with that index for stream. And if we do that, scroll all the way down until we find something that tells us about headers. Oh, look, there's a field called source headers. That's probably a good place to go looking. And if we just simply click on that field over here, some stuff is going to pop up right away as, you know, as far as the most common values go. You might even be able to see it here, but let me zoom in. Right there in the values itself, Acunetics, Web Vuln Scanner, free edition. Yep, that's it. I mean, it's shouting it out pretty much in plain sight there. I also gave you another hint that user agent strings might be a place to look. So if we switch over to finding the field that references something about user agent strings, we find HTTP _ user _ agent. And clicking on that field, we see some reference to Acunetics WVS security test. Yeah, but that looks like what we're looking for, but you know, it's not as blatant as the other stuff we saw. If we didn't know for sure, we might Google that word Acunetics, and yep, it's a Vuln scanner. Awesome. Pop that into our scoring server. Team CornCon just scored another 100 points. You guys are rocking it. We're going to document our work, so we're going to throw that into the into our Lockheed Martin kill chain view. Still at the reconnaissance phase here. We're going to throw that into our attack picture as well, and move on to our next challenge. So it'd be also helpful to know what content management system is running on I'mReallyNotBatman.com. Not that content management systems ever have vulnerabilities or anything. WordPress. It is not WordPress in this case, but they are often wrought with some vulns. So it'd be good to know whether or not we're running a vulnerable version of a content management system. So go ahead and try to find what CMS it is. Remember that content management systems are essentially creating directory structures, and directory structures correspond with URIs. And every software, 10-bit of software, by default, typically will set the root directory of whatever it's installing to its own name, right? So, you know, when you install Windows, what's the base directory that Windows installs in? It's something Windows, right? So other software does that as well. So you might find references in that in URIs, might find that in server logs, all sorts of places. So go ahead and dig into it. Some of you may have even spotted it when we were going through the last answer. If you're familiar with some of the CMS content management systems that are out there, you might have spotted the name previously. I'll give you just another minute or two to work through this question. Who thinks they found it already? Give me a raised hand in the participants list so I can see how you're doing. Sweet, got a couple people already. Bob, somehow I knew you'd get that one. Brandon, good job, man. I'll give folks just another minute, and then we'll work through the answer. Okay, that should be a good amount of time for you guys. Let's see what we can find. So if you didn't know what a CMS was, of course, you might have to Google that first, but I gave you some good guidance there. We might also ask ourselves, well, do we have the IP address of that web server? If we don't, can we figure that one out? So based on our previous findings, absolutely. So if we just take some stuff we already know, which is 40 was going after our server, and it was coming over the wire, and we drop down just using that search and look for the destination field, we see two destinations. And if this was the stuff coming over the wire, .70 is almost definitely our web server, right? So now we know the IP address of our web server. Good information to have. In a large environment, would it be that easy? Probably not. You might have to do some more digging just to confirm that that was I'm really not Batman.com's web server IP address. But we can leverage that now for our search. So if we change our search to reflect that we want to know about traffic coming to our web server, so .70 over the wire, and then take a look at the URI field, which is one of your hints. So we'd scroll down after running the search. We would scroll down, find things referencing the URIs, and like I said, we've got a bunch of directory structure here, and the root of a lot of this is Joomla, right? Is Joomla a content management system? I have no idea. Let's go Google it. What is Joomla? Yeah, what is the Joomla comes back with? Joomla is a CMS. That's definitely our CMS there. Can we further validate it? Sure, we can do. We can get a little fancy here. We can actually change our search so that we're only so we're looking for actual successful page loads by adding the status of 200. We can throw that into a stats table, which would let us count by the URI and show the results in descending order. So doing that, we get lots and lots of successful page loads. So not only is this the CMS on the server, but it's the active one. You know, it's always possible that you may have more than one CMS on a server, but not all of them are active, just because nobody refreshed the machine, right? We can also find the answer in our server logs as well, our web server logs. So if we change our search a little bit, the IS calls a successful page load. It puts it in a different field, SC_status. And if we wanted to show the actual directory structure, we could call out the values of a field called CS_URI_stem. That gives us a result similar to what we saw from the URIs, with Joomla at the root of all of this directory structure, right? So is it Joomla? Heck yeah. If we add that to our kill chain, we can add that to our attack picture as well. And we are ready to start on our next challenge. Good job, guys. So changing our focus a little bit here, we suspect that Poison Ivy, our attacker, attempted some sort of brute force attack against the web server itself. So literally, they're trying to guess the user ID and password. You need to find out which IP address was actually running that brute force attack. Now, a couple of things that'll be helpful in your search. If you want in the post, somebody tell me what web method will be the most likely web method used when you're sending a username and password to a web server. Anybody know? I know you guys know this one. Somebody drop it in the chat. Oh, come on. Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Bob. Yes, post, absolutely. So when you're passing information to a web server, post is almost always going to be that method. That form that you input that data in is typically a field called form data. And what you're looking for is not just stuff where form data exists, but stuff where form data exists. And in that form data are things referencing usernames and passwords. Now, sometimes form data shortens, password may not be fully spelled out. It could be an abbreviation of the word password, but you're looking for results that actually contain things like username and password in it, which, by the way, hopefully some of you have your spidey sense tingling now, right? Because the first thing we should be asking is what the hell did the freaking admin do? They're allowing usernames and passwords in the clear. That's terrible. Yeah, that happens. So we've got usernames and passwords in the clear going to our web server, and we're looking for the IP address that did a lot of it. We want the culprit that sent many usernames and passwords to our web server in the form data in a post. And with that, I'll give you guys a couple minutes. I'm gonna go grab a cup of coffee while you guys are digging through the data. I'll be back in 30 seconds. All right, class, how we doing? Does anybody think they found the answer? If you have, go ahead and drop me a raised hands in the attendees list. Good job. Wow, awesome. Good job, guys. Does anybody want another minute before I go ahead and walk through the solution? If you do, hit me in the chat. Nope. All right, let's take a look. Yes, for some odd reason, our evil attackers did not adhere to the rights of use for the software itself, right? The third-party agreement. So let's take a look. June, close, but I'll show you how we. Yeah, I can see why you went with that one, but let's take a look at the data. So our brute force attack is going to come over the wire again, of course, so we can start looking there. And if we just take a look at all the stuff coming over the wire, we'll see a whole bunch of IP addresses here. Some of them are internal. I hope that they are not brute forcing our web server. And And our friend over there, 40, certainly is generating a heck of a lot of traffic. They'd definitely be suspect here because brute force, definitely a noisy attack. But let's validate, see if we can validate our hypothesis and narrow our list of suspects here as well. And this is just like CSI, right? No smelly dead bodies, thank God, in InfoSec, usually. But the methodology is the same. We see clues, we cast a hypothesis, we narrow down our hypothesis and try to find the truth. So we know that 70 is our web server. So if we add that up into our search to narrow our field, we see that only a handful of IP addresses were actually talking to our web server over HTTP. And again, I hope 192.168 wasn't the one doing the brute forcing. Going in further, we gave you a hint that the HTTP method might be would be post. So if we just using the same search but switching to a different field here and clicking on HTTP method further down in this screenshot, we're going to see a lot of posts going on. In fact, a lot of posts, right? I would expect this to be flipped in most cases. A web server typically should be responding with more gets than posts as far as the method goes, right? So let's add post up to here to our search and see who's been posting directly to our web server. And now our field of suspects has gone way down. 23 and 40 are the only two IP addresses that have been posting to our web server. And 40 is looking really good for our suspect now, right? Lots of stuff coming from 40, but we need to validate this. So I told you that we want to find events where the form data actually contains username and password or something like it. Now, if you didn't know it was abbreviated like this, if you just took a look at form data equaled anything, you could look and see, well, they're right in the data, form data looks like it abbreviates it by password. So you can take that knowledge and then create a search that looks like this, where what we're saying is we want anything coming over the wire, going to our web server, .70, that's actually a post where the form data field has anything, followed by username, followed by anything, followed by password, followed by anything. We do that, and we can throw it into a table. And if we throw in a table, we're going to get something like this. Now, we're getting close. We're on the hunt. This table shows us that there's a lot of user names and passwords being passed to our server. We need to figure out who did the most. So this is table, right? The table command, which I told you puts things in a table. The command that lets you put things in a table and count them is stats. So let's flip that. Let's put that into stats count by the field we're looking for, source, so that we can see which IP address was doing all of this username and password stuff. And what happens to our table here? Yeah, it flips, right? 40 only did one attempt at a username and password. 23 did 411. Does that look more likely to be a brute force attack? Yeah. So we tried to mislead you a little bit by with the noise, but if we further narrow down our suspects just by using some logical approach, we can see that 23 was the one actually sending lots of usernames and passwords, 411 combinations. So we throw that into our scoring server. We can see that our attackers jumped ahead and is trying now exploitation phase of the kill chain. We also are getting a really good idea of this attack visually. We now see that our attacker has multiple systems in its infrastructure and is possibly staging portions of the attack. By the way, we are doing this particular workshop mapping to Lockheed Martin kill chain, but the MITRE attack framework is another really good framework for mapping out your attacks. We highly recommend it, and we've been using MITRE attack to great effect within Splunk as well, as far as how we start establishing risk and use risk-based alerting rather than just one-to-one alerting based on, you know, correlation to alert. Okay, so our next challenge is going to be really just a little bit of spin on what you just did. So we want to find which brute force password was used, which one. So when that attacker launched that brute force tool, which I'm assuming what they did, I don't think they typed in each one. What was the first password used? Now, would you do this in an investigation? Probably not, but I'm teaching you some skills here. So this skill happens to be about time and how to use time as your investigation. Every event within Splunk has a field called _time, and that's where your timestamp's going to go. And obviously, to find the first brute force password used, you're going to use the search that you just ran, more or less, but you're going to expose the time field and you're going to look for the oldest timestamp. So using just what you did before, but so I showed you how to create tables. You're going to want essentially a table that shows you the stuff you were just searching for, but also the time field. So the table command essentially is, you know, you take whatever you're searching for, pipe it into table, and then you say table, and then you say the fields you want. So it's going to be pipe table _time _ form data, you know, just for confirmation. You could, building on your last search, just do time, but it's always nice to have visually there the fact that you have results with username and password in it. So you'd want that form data exposed as well. I'm going to give you a few minutes, and you're going to try and find the first password that was sent by our attacker's brute forcing tool. All right. Does anybody want any more time before I go ahead and show you the answer? You can just pop me a note in the chat if you want just another minute. And if you do, remember, everybody understands, right? If you are like so close to the freaking answer and you just, oh, we're always, everybody's always happy to give fellow students another minute or so. But it doesn't look like anybody's asking for any more time. So let's, here we go. I changed my display around a little bit. You guys can still see my screen, right? Yeah, cool. Thank you. So from here, building right on what we just did, right? And we just want to find out events that have username and password in them where it actually exists. So there's going to be stuff in there. We can then pass that into the table command and then just expose two fields, _time and form data. And form data is really just for confirmation. Now, by default, Splunk always gives you the most recent event first. So by default, this time list is going to be in descending order, right? So the newest first, and then the oldest is going to be further down, and we can see we have many pages of results here. Now, for those of you familiar with Splunk, anytime you have a table like this, the easy peasy way, and the way I would do it if I was competing, is you can just click on the ascending, descending arrows to switch the sort order. So that'd be the down and dirty way. That's the way I would do it. But we want to teach you some stuff here too, especially if you want to save this search. If you wanted to save the search and send it to someone else sorted in the correct order, you'd have to add a command to do that. And for tables, the command is reverse. So if we take all of those results and then send it to a new command called reverse, we're going to get the oldest timestamp here right at the top. We could actually save this search if we wanted to then. And here in our results, the password, yeah, every executive's favorite password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's our results. Oh wait, you're just seeing my PowerPoint, right? That's what I want you to see. Is it advancing to what I'm talking about? You guys can see the results of that search, right? With 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on it. Oh yeah, no, okay. No. Holy crap. Hold on. God, I hate Zoom sometimes. Stop this share, start this share. Move it to PowerPoint. What do you guys see now? You should see a screen that says oldest first up at the top. Yeah? Okay, good. Yep. All right, cool beans. So yes, so if we reverse the order of this search so that we get the oldest timestamp first, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 there in the results. And that's going to be the answer to our question. And I'm going to also give you guys a more advanced search here because we're going to use this in the next challenge. So if we want just the password itself extracted from this string here, from this whole string, we can use regex to pull it out. Now, raise of hands, who here loves regex? I mean, just loves regex. Give me a, yeah, awesome. Okay. If you meet anyone in your life that absolutely loves regex, buy them lots of beer because they should really be your best friend. Because regex is awesome and it's powerful. Not everybody loves it though. Not everybody's just awesome at it. So if you've got awesome regexers in your crew, yeah, treat them well because this stuff is awesome. So what we're doing here is we're using regex to pull the actual password portion of the string out, and we're assigning it to a new variable called user password, essentially a new field called user password. Then we're saying, hey, give us back results where user password actually has something in it, it's not null. I'm going to reverse the order again. I'm going to use head, which works a lot like head and tail do from the command line. And tell head just give me the first result, throw it into a table, and there is my password. I can copy and paste that into my scoring server if I like. And we're going to use this regex in our next search. Now, that's a lot to type. If I were you, I'd go to find the place in the app where this search exists and at least copy and paste it. It'll be much easier. But that, oh yes, so that brings us to our next question. So this is a bit of a logic challenge here. We know how to find a list of passwords that were used by the brute forcing tool. One of those usernames and password combinations actually worked. So the brute forcing tool did its job. It found a set of credentials that actually allowed access. We want to know which was the correct password. So you'll find results that have a username and password that were used. You want to find the password that actually allowed access to our content management system running on I'mReallyNotBatman.com. And as a bonus, find the IP address that was used. Now, I said this was a logic challenge, right? So let's think about this. If you are trying usernames and passwords, either manually or through a tool, how many times are you going to use a unique combination of username and password? So like if your first attempt is admin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, how many times are you going to try that particular combination? Anybody can throw it in the chat. And especially how many times is a brute forcing tool going to try the combination of admin and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? It's only going to do it once, right? No brute forcing tool is going to waste time trying the same username and password 5 times. It's only going to use it once. So what you're really looking for here is which password got used twice or more than once, let's say. So if you can find the username and password that was used more than once, that will tell you which one actually worked in this case. And you can extract the string of passwords out into a table using that regex and throwing it into table. But of course, table won't let you count. And this is a counting solution as well, right? We have to figure out the count of the passwords that were used so that whichever one was used more than once. I mean, you could actually sort, I suppose, and scroll through the list until you see a password that got used twice. If you're sorting by the password field, that would get you there as well. And if you're faster at just scrolling through lots of text, yeah, you could go that way as well. I'll give you guys just another minute or so to see if you can find the actual password in the results. Again, if you want, use the companion app to get you partway there and see if you can like tweak that search a little bit to get the search that gives you the results we're looking for. Does anyone think they've found it already? Awesome. Good job. All right. Does anyone want another minute before I show the answer? Okay, cool. Let's see if we can go find it. All right. So again, using that regex that we learned about in the previous question, we're going to extract the string of passwords out. Then we're going to throw that into a stats command, which will let us count by that very field that we just created, that user password field. If we put that into this table that allows us to count by password, and then again, sort in reverse order, or skip that part and just hit the up down arrows till we get sorted in the correct order, only one password was used more than once, and that was Batman. So, you know, Bruce is doing really good on his password policies here. But Batman was used twice. And then there was a bonus to this question as well. We asked also if you could figure out which IP address actually used it to gain access. So we've got one, you know, we've got a system out there brute forcing. It may have been the one that actually then accessed, but let's take a look. If we change our stats command here a bit, so that we're adding not only looking at user password, but we're also counting by the value of the source IP, so that source IP gets exposed in our table here. We'll see that our row here has a count of 2 for Batman and 2 IP addresses show up here, which means that each one used it once, right? So, so if 23 from our previous question was our brute forcer, 40 is actually the one that took that, you know, set of results that were found, a successful brute force attempt, and then used it to actually log in to our web server. So Batman's the answer to our question with the bonus question of 40. Throw it into a fancy little table here as well for you, just in case you wanted to create reports on it. And yep, not only did Batman work, but it looks like they logged in to essentially an administrator account too, right? That's the administrator for Joomla here on our content management system. So yeah, not good. Thanks, thanks admins for setting up such a secure server. We're gonna throw this into our attack kill chain documentation that we're documenting out. So good job there. Throw this into our attack picture. Look at this awesome attack picture you guys are filling out. I swear to God, you're going to get promoted to SOC Tier 2 by the end of the week. Yeah, such awesome documentation here. All right, so another time question. And this one, you know, so we're going to try and figure out how many seconds elapsed between when the brute force attack found the correct password and when our other attacker actually used it to log in. Again, we're teaching a little bit about commands here, but we're also, this would be also interesting to know because the time delta between found password and used password can tell us a bit about our attacker, right? Are they scripting this? Are they doing it manually? Maybe they're using Cobalt Strike to automate their attack. But the time delta can speak to, give us an indication at least on whether or not our attacker is automating their attack, which could show them to be a bit more sophisticated, or if they're literally taking the results and, you know, copying and pasting it from one system to another, or emailing it from one person to another. The time delta can be a helpful indicator on your attacker's tactics. So let's see if we can find it out. This you can do this just by finding the timestamps and then using a calculator to subtract one from the other. But we're also teaching a little bit about the transaction command. So for those of you that want to get a little more advanced or want to try the transaction command, you can use it through the app itself. The transaction command is pretty cool. It's a lot like if you've ever used Wireshark, or for those of you that have been, you know, real old school, ethereal, you know that there's a function called follow HTTP conversation. So if you got a bunch of HTTP logs, packets captured in Wireshark, you can say follow the HTTP conversation, and it will show you the HTTP transactions in a conversational way, just kind of like chat does. Transaction will follow a conversation or a transaction as well, and you can tell it to mark its start and stop by any unique field within the data that you're looking at. So for this one, you can literally say, hey, transaction, the first time you see a password is the start of a transaction, and the last time you see that same password is the end of that transaction. And if there are multiple passwords, it will track multiple conversations, which is really cool. If you want to learn how to use a transaction command, you can literally, the best way to do it is Google Splunk transaction command, and that'll give you all the syntax. We use the transaction command all the time to look for web-based fraud. The transaction command can extract these conversations out. And those conversations then, if you run it through something like our machine learning toolkit, can look for outliers. And guess what? Fraudulent transactions almost always end up as outliers when you're looking at web-based transactions. So a very, very cool way to find fraud if your company deals with fraud, especially, like I said, in things like web transactions. So I'm going to give you guys just another minute or two to see if you can figure out the seconds transpired between brute force attack and actual compromise by the second system. By the way, how's the pace for you guys? Am I going at a good speed, too fast, too slow? Feel free to just, if you go to panelists, I'm the only panelist here, so you can give me feedback privately just to the panelists if you want, or you can put it into everybody. But just give me an idea if I'm going too fast, too slow, or just right. Hopefully, I've hit the Goldilocks speed here for you. Awesome. Thank you for the feedback, Tammy. Definitely appreciate it. In fact, it really helps me to get feedback in general. So all of you that have been giving me feedback, thank you so much. Otherwise, I just end up feeling like a crazy person talking to themselves here. So it's all, especially since you guys can't turn on your mics in this environment. It's just really great to hear you out there. So thank you so much. By the way, if you like this workshop is free to customers or groups. So I can't do it free for like just one person, but if your organization would like this internally for your whole team, I can do this for free for your team. Or if you've got like, a hacker group or even you and just a bunch of your friends in the InfoSec community. You guys want to all get together and have another session of this, I can totally set that up for you guys. Easiest way to request it is if you have a relationship with a Splunk team, you can request it through them and just tell them you want me. If you don't have any relationships with any Splunk field people, you can always hit me up directly. I will be sharing out my email address at the end of class, so you guys can hit me up there as well. In fact, just in case folks have to leave early. Oh man, you're doing .conf? That's awesome. So Tammy, the Boss of the Sock competition will be brand new this year. We do a new set of challenges and a new set of questions. So if you've got time to do the Boss of the Sock competition, this is a great primer for it. You're learning all the skills that you'll need to compete. You'll always want to put together a team. So we allow teams up to 4. And you're going to want a team because you're going to be competing against teams. And it's just really helpful to have someone who's really good with Windows data and someone who's really good with regex and all this kind of stuff. So if you can pull a team together, go for it. We did have a guy really good at Splunk. He competed. We had an all Canada boss of the SOC last week. And this guy was so good that he came in 3rd place by himself against teams of 4. The guy was just amazing. You know, and I'm going to put, just for those of you that, you know, might not be able to stick around to the end too, I'll put my email address here in the chat. And that way, not only can you hit me up there if you want to do a class, but some of you had requested the slides. By the way, you really don't need the slides. This companion app that comes with it, I'm going to switch back over to that. Where is my browser? There we go. This companion app has all of the challenges, you know, scenario by scenario, with full explanation of what each challenge is. So, and it's free to download. So these servers, the server that you guys are working on right now, this is up for 24 hours. So you can play with it to your heart's content till sometime tomorrow. But if you want the app itself, here's what you do. So it's open source. It's up at Splunk base. So I'm gonna pull it up here. So what you would do is you go to Splunk base and we're looking for boss of the SOC. There we go. So come on, here we go. So boss of the SOC investigation workshop for Splunk. That's the app. And somewhere in the notes here, it's going to tell you where the data set is. So the data set is off our GitHub. Yep, there you go. So here's what you would do if you wanted to do this on your own. You download the free version of Splunk. You download this app, and then you download this data set. You import the data set, you install the app on top of Splunk, and then you are good to go. And if you're not sure how to do all of that, we have another free thing for you. So it's Splunk Fundamentals 1 is a free online class that teaches you the basics of getting Splunk set up, how to start searching, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, how to get stats, dashboards, lookups. That's a really good class, and it is totally free. If there and these things are free for eternity. There's no time limit on it. If you are a vet or you know a vet, we offer even more free classes for vets in honor of their service. So if you know someone, if you know a vet that needs to new skills or needs to get a new job, they can learn quite a bit about Splunk. And let me tell you, there are people hurting right now for Splunk people in organizations. So it is a fast track to a good job for folks that are looking. I'm gonna switch back over to our slides here. Everybody can still see my slides, yeah? Just want to make sure. Okay, cool. Thanks, June. So let's see what we can do with this challenge here on the time elapsed. Again, you already know what data you're looking for, right? You're looking based on our previous searches. We want to now figure out how much time elapsed from when Batman was found to be legit to used to actually exploit our server. So we can use that password as part of our filter. So we're gonna regex out all the passwords, but then we're gonna pass that back into search and say, hey, only come back with results where that field that we created, user password, actually equals Batman. And then we're gonna throw that in a table, just like we've done with some other things, exposing the timestamp, and then have the other fields there again just for validation, visual validation, so we know that the time that we're getting is the time that we want. And we get these two timestamps. You know, 23 was the one that found it, and that's the oldest timestamp. 40 actually used it. We could just bust open calc right now, which usually gets used for exploit demos, but we can subtract one for the other, and we would have the seconds. Now, in this particular one, they made a mistake. These questions come from the first year we did this competition, and they forgot to ask how many decimal points, because they assumed everybody would use the transaction command. So if you used calculator, you might not get the right answer if you didn't know how many decimal points. But I'm going to show you how to use the transaction command now. So we're going to take that search, and instead of putting it in a table, we're going to take the results of anything where the user password actually is Batman, and we're going to pass it to the command transaction. We're going to say, hey, transaction, your start and stop marker is user password. Anytime you see a unique user password, start that transaction. And the last time you see it will be the end of the transaction. And the first and last will be defined by the scope of your time, right? Your time sets the limits for what the first and last can be. It doesn't go on to perpetuity. It's going to stop at some point, because either there's going to be no more data or you're going to hit the end of your time window. So we're going to pass that into transaction, and by default, transaction calculates the duration of that transaction. So this is duration is a field automatically generated by what transaction is doing. And to see it, we're just going to expose it in a table. So it's going to look like this. So what we've got here is, hey, anything coming over the wire, I want to pull out any data that contains user passwords. I want to pull that password out as a string, call it user password. I'm going to then reduce all that stuff that came through to just the ones where the user password actually equals Batman, because that was the one that was used. I'm going to tell transaction to track that by user password and calculate the duration and expose that duration for me in a table, giving me the results of 92.169084 seconds. And that's how we get to that challenge. All right, we're going to change gears a lot. We've been looking at a lot of stuff off the wire. Let's change our focus. This will still be a little bit. This will be a little bit of wire data. This will be a little bit of other data as well. But Poison Ivy attacked our server. They brute forced their way in. They, of course, as good hackers, start uploading their own tools. So we want to find the name of the executable the Poison Ivy uploaded. As a bonus, what was the source address of the executable that was uploaded? Now, this is a Windows server. We're going to keep it simple. There are plenty of extensions that are executable. We all know the most common extension for an executable, right? Yeah, it's .exe. And you can use that to your advantage in this particular challenge. Having a whole list of executable extensions would be handy. And I just happen to have one. And if you come to my talk at 2 o'clock, I'll show you that list. By the way, so John Johnson, one of the primary organizer here for CornCon, had announced yesterday that he had a couple slots that aren't full. In one case, it's literally because one of the presenters, one of our own people, has contracted COVID. I don't know their state. I don't know if it's serious. I just know they were not able to make the con today. And so he had slots he needed to fill. I told him I would be happy to do the 2 o'clock slot. So this class, we're going to end a little bit early. We're not going to end it right at 2. We're going to end it at like 10 to 2. And then I'll be doing, Andy, you've seen this one already. It was last minute, so I told him, I could do my tips and tricks talk. So I've got to talk all about the free and cheap things I've learned as a security practitioner can kind of help fill security gaps when you don't have budget. It's also a good cure for shiny object syndrome, and remind people that you don't have to buy something every time you have a problem. So if you want to come to that one, that's at 2. It'll be in this same room, so you don't even have to leave if you don't want to. For the question you're trying to answer now, think again about what HTTP method would be used when you're uploading a file to a server. Post, again, yes. And think about what source types might actually see those files. And I'll give you just another minute because I've been babbling along and you guys have probably been working hard on the challenge. Okay. Does anyone need any more time on this one? If you do, just pop me in the chat and I'll give you another minute. Cool. All right. Let's see what we can find. All right. So I told you you can use .exe literally as part of your search parameters. So we can throw that up in there into our search. Obviously, it went onto our server, so we can limit our search by our server as well. So .70 is part of our parameters in our search here as well. And coming over the wire might be a good place to look. So if we just take a look at that and look through our interesting fields, depending on how well you know a data source, sometimes you may just have to look like things that are likely. As you get to know various data sources better, it'll become almost intuitive. But in this particular data source stream, we do have a field called part_file name. File names might be a good place to find something referenced by .exe. So let's take a look. If we scroll down, find that field and click on it, we'll see two results coming back, 3791.exe and agent.php. This looks like our suspect. Let's see if we can validate that hypothesis. So intrusion detection systems also know a lot about files. They're looking for malicious files and they're going to tell you about them if they find them. They may just log every file depending on how it's configured. So if we take a look at the current Suricata data set with the same parameters here, we see 2 executables. This is just a standard Windows executable. And if we take a look, we'll find it came from the inside, not the outside, if we were to drill down on that one. 3791 though, popping up here again. Definitely suspect here. Quick note about host names versus IPs. Not all fields going to have the same values depending on where the logs are coming from and how those logs are configured. So if you have to search multiple values for the same thing, you can use the or in between things along with brackets. So basic Boolean logic here, right? But if you had potentially a dest field or a dest_IP field, you could define both of those just by putting them in brackets with an or in between them. It doesn't have to be just IP addresses. You could say the dest is the server name, as well as the dest could be the IP address. And if we do that and take a look at some of the values, there's I'mReallyNotBatman.com showing up as dest. Fileinfo.filename still showing up with 3791. Well, you can see in here we also added the HTTP method of post as part of our search to narrow things down. If we actually then wanted to find out which IP address sent 3791, we could add, literally clicking on that, we could add that parameter up into our search. And now we're searching for anything that Suricata saw where the destination was either that URL or that IP address. The method was post. It was an executable, and the executable's name happened to be this. And guess who it came from? Yeah, no surprise there, 40, which was the IP address that logged in with that legit set of credentials, right? So not really surprised at that, but it is the second part of the challenge. So we're going to drop that into our scoring server. 3791 is the answer, with a bonus of 40 being the source of the executable. And we're going to throw that into our documentation. Really good attack picture we're building out here. All right, so we know the name of that executable. Let's see if we can figure out the MD5 hash of it. Now, if we had a copy of the file, this would be super easy, right? Just drop down to the command line and hash that puppy, or throw it up into one of the many web tools out there that will hash things for you. But we don't. We have the name of it. But file hashes can be found in certain data sources. So if you know which ones to look in, you'll find it. And let me see. And I'm going to give you a hint. One of the log sources that we're going to see actually hashes executables at process execution. And what we want is the MD5 at process launch. That's the MD5 that we're looking for. So the source type that we're working with now. We're switching gears. We're heading over to the endpoint now, and we're going to get this out of Sysmon. So many of you may know Sysmon and what it logs. It logs a lot. In fact, I saw a presentation by Dave Kennedy last year where he said they've been using Sysmon so much that he actually turned to his team and said, hey, if we were running an investigation and all we had was Sysmon logs, could we figure out what happened? I mean, obviously you wouldn't have all the evidence that you wanted to take it to court and stuff like that, I think, but could you, or maybe you would, I mean, it depends on how robust it is, but you wouldn't have things like forensic images of things. You'd have to create those. But if all you had was Sysmon, could you figure out the incident? And they could not think of a single instance within, the Windows world where if all you had was Sysmon, you could figure out the attack. And that's pretty amazing. I mean, I started to wonder, could teams actually do that? Like dump all the rest of your logs as far as security goes. Get rid of the freaking Windows, get rid of AV, all that stuff, and just log Sysmon, meaning you only have one log source to tend to ensure that you're getting those logs, and then only one data source to fully understand. I don't know if I'd want to rely just on Sysmon, because Sysmon's got its issues too. But boy, that'd be a really powerful place to start. So Sysmon does all sorts of things like logging process creation, which is really good for malware investigations. Network connections, awesome. Drivers that are loaded, file creations, registry events, the list keeps going. So if you don't know InfoSec Taylor Swift by now, and you should, Swift on Security has a great blog and script on helping you configure Sysmon for particularly focused on malware, but on security. And it's a great resource. Another good resource for endpoint logging is a website called Malware Archaeology. They have cheat sheets for all operating systems and what you'd want to log specifically focused on malware and malware detection, which is great because Windows is noisy as hell. You don't want to log everything that Windows logs. You don't want to pull that all into your index. There's a lot of noise out there. You want to stick with just what's relevant. Those are two great resources to figure out just what's relevant. Okay, hopefully that was enough time for you guys to find that hash. I'm going to change my display a little bit here. Tell me if you'll lose my presentation. I'm just going to, yeah, hold on. I'll reshare it out. Come on. All right. Hopefully you guys can see that. If you don't, hit me in the text. Otherwise, I'll assume we're good. And so looking for hashes, sysmon was definitely the clue. And we also know which executable that we need to hone down on, right? 3791 is what we need to find the hash of. So it can be part of your search. It's the information you know. And we know that sysmon is going to be the place where we're going to go looking. So just doing that, if we take a look at event description, which is going to be the Windows events that sysmon's picking up, that sysmon is picking up, we're seeing some great stuff here. So image load, process create, network connect. Yeah, we're on the right track. And if we scroll all the way down, we'll see in the interesting fields, we'll see the hashes. Those hashes, it's just not just MD5, right? We see SHA-1, SHA-256, so on and so forth. So narrowing that down, we're gonna focus on the command line, because what we want is the hash that sysmon created as part when our malicious executable actually executed. So we do have command line in here. That's awesome, as well as parent command line. This is great because now you can actually see execution chains. If you have, Trojans or Trojan downloaders or something like that, one thing kicks off another thing, which then kicks off another thing, which kicks off an embedded process in something. This is a great way to follow execution chains, just by throwing command line and parent command line results into a table. But if we just take a look at 3791, then where we're taking a look at the sysmon stuff, and now you kind of have to know this, right? So knowing your data source, event code equal 1 is that execution. So we're looking for the event code equal 1 to get the correct hash. And if we take a look at the MD5 values, we're seeing that we definitely have them. We see that there's a couple things for the results of command line here, including cmd.exe, which would be expected. But with just this search in place, if we scroll down a bit and then take a look in one of the events right here, we'll see the event where 3791 what was run from the command line. We also see it right up here in the raw logs, and the hash for that command line execution. So that hash right there, that's the hash we're looking for. Again, we see some other ones as well, but it was the MD5 that was part of the challenge. And we can even, if we need to extract that out, we can throw that into stats and have it give us the values of that field. That might make it easier to copy and paste. But we throw that into our scoring server, we throw that into our documentation, and we throw that into our very awesome attack picture that we're building out. So great job again. You guys are rocking it. Once our attacker got in, uploaded their tools, we know that the end result of this attack was that they defaced I'mReallyNotBatman.com. When an attacker defaces a website, do they bother putting in a whole content management system with a whole bunch of CSS? And no, they don't. They basically just put an image up that's going to be at the root of that server as the first thing that people see when they go to I'mReallyNotBatman.com, right? So we want the name of the file that was used for the defacement. It's going to be an image file of some sort. If you have a hard time finding it, it may be because now the direction of activity may be reversed, right? So when is a server not a server? Just because you call a server doesn't mean it's always acting like a server, right? Sometimes servers act like clients, especially when people do stupid things on them or malicious things on them. So remember directionality and how directionality affects post versus gets. And that if you get stuck, that should help you find what you're looking for. You're looking basically for the file that was transferred to imreally.batman.com. Knowing where it came from will help you. You know where it came from. Or you know one of the places it might have come from. I'll give you just a minute or so to get to the answer. All right, guys, if anybody needs another minute, let me know in the chat. Otherwise, we'll dig through our answer here. Cool. All right, let's dig into it. So we can start our search looking, if we presume that the activity may look similar to other stuff that we've seen, we could take a look at what was heading over to our server in the Suricata logs, but where 70 is the source versus 70 is the destination. Not seeing a whole lot here. We can take a look at the destination IP. And for some of you that have been doing this a while, again, your spidey sense should be tingling right now. This is not the results I would expect for destination IP with this search. We can take a look into, we can pivot into destination IP addresses and take a look at the URLs that they were hitting. So 23, definitely one of our suspects here. And if we take a look at it, yeah, wow. What do we have here really? We have some very bizarre, well, certainly should be against policy traffic. So if we break this traffic down a little bit, right? If we have a client talking to our server, it's usually going to do a get, right? Now we saw it do posts with the passwords, and we saw it do a post when it pushed a file up to imreallynotbatman.com. But that's not what actually happened here. What happened here instead is our web server talked to that 23 address. How often should web servers start a conversation? Yeah, this is bad. And in fact, creating an alert literally just for this, for anytime our server is the source of a conversation to the outside. Now, sometimes based on traffic patterns, weird things could possibly generate this. It's not very common. And I would definitely want to be alerting on any time a web server is initiating a conversation to the outside world. Now, more often than not, it's probably just an admin not adhering to policy and downloading a patch or a library or something like that. But right, Andy Patrick, thank you. Never, 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 never. Yeah, this shouldn't happen. And this can be a bit of logic that would make for a great alert that you would set up. So if we take a look at Suricata versus Stream, we see Suricata's picking up on some similar stuff there too. One of the things that we see coming across the wire is when our server is the source of HTTP traffic is some XML and a JPEG. So Poison Ivy and a JPEG that's conveniently named with a very suspicious name. So that should jump out at you right away as our probable malicious file. Let's take a look at some other things too. So what about our firewall data? What does it show as far as this traffic goes? If we pop our .70 address up into there and take a look at the source results, we see our external servers talking to our server, but we also see some of the reverse. We see our server talking to several external IP addresses, including 23 out there. If we were doing a summation of inbound traffic versus outbound traffic, we could do something like this, and this outbound traffic with only 9 events would certainly be far more suspicious to me than these 14,000 events where our server was the destination of some traffic, not the source of some traffic on the firewall. And oh, hey, wow, our awesome next-gen firewall also categorized some of that traffic as malicious websites. Now, I'm guessing we had it in observe-only mode and not block mode. Otherwise, our attacker would not have been able to reach out and grab that JPEG. So the next-gen firewall knew about this stuff being malicious, but doesn't look like it got blocked. And if we leverage that category and actually take a look then in the logs where, hey, tell us about anything involving .70 on the next-gen firewall where 70 was not the destination and the category was malicious websites. If we take a look at the files then, so fields with files in them, this file underscore path has poison IDs coming for you, batman.jpg as well. Yeah, I think we've proved, 5 ways to Sunday that that's our malicious file. We're going to drop that into our scoring server, into our documentation. Oh my God, look at how good this is all looking. You guys are going to get medals for how good your documentation is here. So, cool. So this next one, we're switching gears again and taking a look at some DNS stuff. DNS is usually a great data source to go hunting for evil in general. Attackers tend to leave their fingerprints in DNS quite often, and they like to use DNS for lots of things, for command and control, for data exfil, because it's usually wide open and often, more often than not, logged, at least not the actual traffic itself. I mean, the DNS servers may have some logging. By the way, if you don't know this, for an investigation, you always want both the query and the response for DNS queries. By default, Windows DNS servers, if you're logging them at all, will only log the request, not the answer. And to get the answer, you have to put them in debug mode, which is absolutely horrible. You don't, if you want to capture DNS traffic, I don't think you want to put your Windows domain servers or whoever's serving up DNS in debug mode. So easiest way to capture this stuff again is right off the stream. Just throw a tap right in front of your name servers. put something that's just capturing what's relevant to what you need. So protocol DNS, maybe just the Q record, you know, the A records and the responses or something like that. But for this one, we're trying to find the fully qualified domain name that was used for that basically the previous attack, that the malicious IP, basically that where that file came from. So what you're looking for is the answer to this. I'm Poison Ivy's coming for you, Batman.com was pulled onto our server, so they've got control of our server. They're now surfing the web with our server. They surfed to their own stuff to get that file and pull it down. The IP address was 23. We want to know what the FQDN of that 23 address, where that JPEG came from, is. So this one should be easy for you guys. So I'll give you a minute or two and then we'll go into the answer. Okay, hopefully that was enough time for you guys to get the answer. You should have been able to use some of the results you found from our previous couple searches there. So let's take a look. So yeah, using literally the same results you just found from our previous search. If you had gone into some of the events themselves, into the raw events, looking for Poison Ivy's coming for you, Batman.jpg as the file in that same event, you're going to see the URL for the 23 address. So looks like prankglassingbracket.jumpingcrab.com with an awesome port to connect to because they're so freaking elite, and that JPEG there. So just confirming this a little bit. So what data sets actually saw this file? If we actually put that string, the string that represents that file name in there, and any results that coming back from it with quotes around it, just to make sure, and that destination and our source of our server, we'll see that it was seen both in stream and in FortiGate firewall itself. We can then limit by the source type and take a look at our HTTP traffic where that exists. And if we scroll down and we find the URLs, there it is right in the URL showing up again. If you didn't have the file name itself, but wanted to actually see if you could figure out the URL of your attacker, you could also, I told you that Stream breaks down the packet captures into different indexes. There's a separate index for DNS, and we can leverage that as our source type. And then just exposing the values of the name, basically the name that's being resolved. We'll find that 23 address. So we can throw that into our scoring server. And detecting dynamic DNS is something we've blogged about before. It can be really helpful, and we lay it out in detail in our blog posts. So read when you've got a chance. But we're going to add that to our attacker. They're obviously now able to move on their actions on objectives, which was to deface our web server, which they now have successfully done by loading up that JPEG. Add that into our attack picture as well. Okay, so we're going to start trying to fingerprint our attacker as well. And we're going to move to some open source tools, right? Not everything that you need to know about your attacker is going to be in Splunk, but you sure can use what you learned in Splunk to start identifying your attacker's infrastructure, to start figuring out what else they have staged as part of their attack. So I want you to find what IP addresses Poison Ivy tied to domains that are pre-staged to attack Wayne Enterprises, and what additional domains were tied to that IP address. So you're going to leverage things like VirusTotal and ThreatCrowd to start taking a look at the domain to IP address associations that are out there based on what you already know about our attacker. So you're going to surf out to VirusTotal and ThreatCrowd, use what you know, right? You got that 23 address, you've got that domain name, this pranking glassine bracket.jumpingcrab.com. You've got that going for you. That's bits of information that you can use to fingerprint your attacker using things like VirusTotal and ThreatCrowd. All right, hopefully you guys were able to find some domains and IP addresses all related to pre-staged infrastructure for this attack using ThreatCrowd, VirusTotal, or maybe your own favorite open source tools. Well, let's look at what we were able to find. So if we go over to ThreatCrowd first and we drop the domain of the prank glass, I'm not going to say it all, into there, just take a look at it. It's showing up as malicious. So yeah, definitely that. And we see some relationships here between multiple domains, some external ones, our own domain, some of our own domains as well. If we do a pivot to IP address and take a look at our suspect IP address and what's spun off of that. Oh, wow, look at that. We're seeing possible typo squatting here in the hopes of either catching people off typos or to use similar name spoofing, maybe to trick people into clicking on links or something like that if they're not paying attention. So some very interesting infrastructure that they've been staging here. We can hop over to VirusTotal and take a look at that URL as well. seeing that it's mapping back to our 23 address. Using that 23 address again to take a look at domain names, and we've got a couple there. Looks like they're staging themselves out in Amazon AWS as well. You can definitely drop those list of things into our question and our bonus question. So 23 is definitely tied to those domains, and those domains are all of these here. Going to add that into our attack picture. So we see that they prepared some stuff way back in the weaponization stage before, probably even before they started attacking us. Add that to our attack picture as well. And we're gonna use some additional OSINT. So we want to identify a malware also associated with our attacker, right? So Gotham City Police Department, they're so awesome. Reported some TTPs for poison ivy. That if they fail to their initial compromise, they're going to fall back to some spear phishing with some custom malware attached. So we want to find out the SHA-256 of some malware they have pre-staged as their fallback, and as an addition, the name of the file that matches that SHA-256 hash. So the email wasn't ever sent, so we're not going to find it in our logs. We do have a bunch of indicators that we've already collected, so we can use that as we go to our OSINT tools. So threat miner, virus total, hybrid analysis, all good places to go looking for the answer to this question. When you go to those websites, you can use things like the IP addresses that you've been keeping copious notes on by now, or that list of domains that we just uncovered. All right, Team CornCon. Does anybody need another minute before we dig down into this answer? Cool. All right, let's take a look. Oh, there we go. All right, so if we go to Threat Miner, Threat Miner can give us an MD5 of the samples from our 23 address, but not the SHA-256. But that's okay. We can leverage that information. We can actually take a look at the actual sample itself by selecting the MD5 hash. And when we dig down into those results, we'll find further information. We can grab that 256 here. We may also want to grab the name of this executable as well for future reference. So we've got the 256, but we probably want to corroborate this with other data, open source tools as well. So if we go over to to VirusTotal and drop that 256 hash in, we can take a look at the results there. Also validating that it's they've been calling it Miranda Tate screensaver as well. We could actually just dump that hash into Google if we wanted to, and we'd get some results back as well. Oh, yep. And so, yeah, that's our corroboration. So our answer to the first question is that 256 hash that we found and corroborated. Bonus question would have been the actual name of the file, which was Miranda Tate screensaver.scr.exe. So good job. Post that up into our notes as well for the kill chain, as well as the attack picture. Oh my God, you guys have documented this so well. I swear to God, you're going to make CISO by the end of the month. It's just awesome. So that is our first scenario. These are all the things that we were able to do and discover. So while we didn't necessarily spell out that the executable that was uploaded was a web shell, I think it was pretty obvious as we were digging through their activity once that executable got uploaded, tried to move around, defaced our website, and so on. That's our complete attack kill chain and our complete attack diagram. We've got a quick break in here. I wouldn't mind taking 5 minutes, but does and when we can take 15 minutes too, it's up to you guys. Just in the chat, tell me if you prefer 5 or 15, and we'll go with whichever gets the most votes. 15, 5. All right, we're Bob, you bastard. 15, we've got 215, 15. All right, unless I see some more 5s there, 15 seems to be the consensus. Bob says anything is fine. All right, so 15-minute break. Let's be here back at the top of the hour, 1 o'clock Central, and we'll get going. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in a bit.